Skip Weber at Weber Chevrolet.
All of my stores have a whole bunch of inventory coming from Chevrolet. There's a lot of built vehicles that have been kind of in holding patterns, and we're going to get a lot of them. Our inventory is going to go through the roof. Chevrolet came back with the best discounts on electric vehicles we've ever had, even better than when they had that special tax rebate that got everybody buying last summer. This is the best deals that we've ever had on EVs. There's a little bit of a pent-up demand because everybody bought as that deal with the government was shutting down. But now, we've been selling a trickle. We have a ton. Nobody's got as many Chevy electric vehicles as we do, period. We want to be in that market, and so we got them. So great way to save some money on that if you're inclined.
Granite City, Columbia, Illinois, Olive and 270, and online at WeberChevrolet.com.
Real behind-the-scenes stories and tall tales from back in the day. From a guy who was there for all of it. It's JC's Sunday Showgram on NewsTalkSTL.
I'm also going to need you to go ahead and come in on Sunday, okay?
Now, here's JC.
That would be me, and I'm happy to finally be able to give you the right date and the right show and not a rerun. It is Sunday, May 3rd, 2026. Here we are on 1019, 94.1 on the News Talk STL app. This is the Sunday Showgram. And for the last couple of weeks has been the go to the archives Sunday Showgram. Yeah, I got myself really sick. You know, and when you're sick at this age, it's different than when you're sick at 40. You gotta take this stuff very, very seriously sometimes. And whether I had COVID or not, I don't even know if the doctors know because they got one positive test and then one negative test. They took two of them because one had been compromised, and I don't even remember which sequence was correct, like which one was the positive one, which one was the negative one. I was too weirded out. I had a fever at one point of 104.1, and this may sound very, very odd to you, but I'm told it's not that uncommon, that when you have a fever that high, you can begin hallucinating. And I don't know that I was hallucinating, but I do know that I had talked myself into believing that I might not make it out of this alive. I distinctly remember that. I have a very good friend in St. Louis who has already been told when I do kick the bucket, whenever that is. I have a pretty valuable selection of memorabilia, signed baseballs, and I'm talking about very, very rare signed baseballs. 1957 Brooklyn Dodgers, for example, and autographed bats, and I got something that Yoko Ono had sent me, and I've got some Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg stuff, and just, things that have actual value. And this friend of mine in St. Louis has already been told you're going to get a box of stuff when I go on to the great beyond, and I want you to do whatever you see fit with it. If you want to hold on to it, let it appreciate, you can do that. You want to sell it, whatever you want to do, go ahead and do that. I just know that my family, my surviving members, and this is getting very macabre here, but I know that my immediate family members don't have the information that they would need to be able to assess value and not get ripped off. So they'll be left with, I'm getting into far too much detail about my impending death. But anyhow, the point is this. I did talk myself into believing that I was going to die. And during that period, I made a big mistake, but you make mistakes when you're hallucinating with 104-degree temperature, 104.1, is I started posting stuff on Facebook. and everybody thought that I was near death. And I may have been, too. I don't know. That's just it. I don't know. But they got me to the emergency room. They drove down the fever, and here I am. So that's the happy ending to the story. I didn't die. And about 20% of this, by the way, just won't let go. It's been 3 weeks now. And when I got this in the first place, I had a doctor say, just prepare yourself because we've seen this recently, and it could last a month. And they were right. They were right because it is coming up on a month pretty soon. And about 20% of this just won't stop. It won't go away. And it's producing coughing and everything like that. So if you think that the threat of getting sick has subsided to the point where, well, I don't have to worry about that, I'm not going to get it. Well, you live and you learn. That's all I can tell you. At one point, by the way, I did get into a discussion with some people on the phone about whether or not they've ever had a near-death experience. Mark Close was telling me, we did this on the air back in the 90s, and Close was telling me he was getting gas somewhere in South City once, and a gunfight broke out in the gas station, and it moved to the outside, and there were actually bullets flying around, and Close hit the deck and got out of there alive. I had a near-death experience on Christmas night, 1977. I've told the story many, many times, but I was in Valparaiso, Indiana, driving back from my parents' house in Chicago to Fort Wayne, Indiana. So you get on Highway 30 there in northwest Indiana, and you just start driving towards Fort Wayne, which is almost on the Ohio border. And I was driving along, and there was a guy, this is about 8 o'clock at night on Christmas night, a guy was going the wrong way on Highway 30. And I turned the wheels at the absolute last second. When something like this happens, you're driving along, and you don't realize that it's happening until it's already on top of you. It's not like I saw him coming. What your brain does is your brain says, something's not right here. Something doesn't look right. And you're thinking, brain, you know what? You're right. Something doesn't look right here. I wonder what. Now, all of that I just said transpired in about 2 seconds. I slowed it down for you, but the whole thing was over in 2 seconds. And I just grabbed the wheel and turned down into this embankment. A lot of people on the highway stopped and came running down the hill because they thought we did collide. And some people had CB radios and things like that, and they were, calling the police saying, you got this idiot driving the wrong way on Highway 30. And the kicker to the story is my mother had given me all these leftovers from Christmas dinner. And I had pumpkin pie and mashed potatoes and turkey and gravy and all this. And all this stuff was sitting on the front seat. And it was such a violent move that I had to make to grab that wheel and turn out of the way and not get hit, head on by this guy going the wrong way. I went down the embankment and everything started flying around. And when people came running down the hill and opened up the door to see if I was okay, there was food all over the inside of the car, just all over everything. The windshield, the dashboard, the seats. The guy looked in there like, what the hell are you doing in here? I was like, yeah, all my food got, I sold that car about 2 years later, and there was a busted windshield, so they had to replace it first. And when I went to pick up the car, the guy said, we took out the windshield, and, we had to move the dashboard around a little bit. We found what looks like dried meat inside your dashboard. It's like I had to explain the story to him. Moral of the story, don't go anywhere. Stay where you are. All right, we're going to cover a lot of ground here on the Sunday Showgram today. We're here until about 9 o'clock. I'll talk a little about yesterday's Kentucky Derby. This, by the way, coming up on my first anniversary of working at NewsTalkSTL. And talk about that a little bit. I have a couple of great stories that I'll get to after we do the weekend pickup here, which is how we start the show every week, and a funny show business story involving Katie Couric and Amy Schumer. And at some point, if we have time, I want to talk a little bit about Kent State. It pisses me off that, here we are decades after the tragedy that happened at Kent State back in 1970. And there are a lot of liars and revisionist history type people out there who want to tell that story different than what actually happened. Well, I was alive when it happened. I was in college I was just about ready to go into college, just finishing up high school in 1970. And I remember everything that happened, and I remember it vividly. And, of course, Crosby, Stills, and Nash rushed into the studio and said, I wrote this song. I think it was Graham Nash wrote it, and we were going to get this thing recorded and get it out. And they did, and For Dead in Ohio is a song that we all know and love. So with all that, let's kick it off with the Weekend Pickup, a collection of semi-psychotic stories that you would have been better off not knowing about, but we throw them at you anyhow. Let's go to press. Now I'm humming that stupid Cotton Eye Joe song I started with Amy Winehouse. All right. This Michael Jackson movie is delighting audiences that go to see it and pissing off pretty much everybody else because the Michael movie leaves out a lot of stuff, including his child molestation allegations, his famous friends, 3 of his siblings, his monkeys, and all that sort of stuff. My daughter, who is 16 and, as a lot of you know, has great taste in music and culture and movies and things like that, even at a young age, has a couple of gaping holes in it. She loves Michael Jackson, and she went to see the movie, and she loved it. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to be a buzzkill, but you know that that's a whitewash. She didn't seem to care. Meryl Streep says she asked for and received double her original salary for The Devil Wears Prada 2, which a lot of people are flocking to this weekend. There are reportedly early talks at Amazon about rebooting The Apprentice with Donald Trump Jr. Social Security Administration just dropped the latest baby-named data. Now, normally they put this at the end of the year, and now look at this coming out of the fairly early on in the year. I don't know what's going on. But names like Truce, Halo, and Messiah are climbing the charts while old school favorites like Patrick and Sarah are losing popularity. The name Maverick is now popular than Thomas. The name Genesis is more popular than Sophie. And Nova is more popular than Grace. One of the fastest names is Icelynn, Icelynn, and the fastest rising boy's name is Truce. Some other names that are picking up steam, we mentioned Halo and Honey. The name Donald, by the way, is falling off the charts. It ranked 672nd last year behind the name Sincere. When I lived in Houston, I ran into some kids who had gone to Texas A&M. They liked it. And if you decide that you want to send somebody in your family to Texas A&M, please know that they have classes on barbecuing. Teaches the history of barbecue, cooking methodology, flavorings, seasonings, and different types of barbecue, not to mention a unit on Thanksgiving turkeys. Who the hell needs math and science and engineering and medical stuff and everything like that when you got barbecue in college? The Greek government pressing ahead with a plan to ban anonymity on social media. The idea is that forcing people to use their real names will reduce toxicity. Oh, yeah, sure it will. I'm not on, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I've not been on that. I had a very ugly experience like the first week I was on it. And then it dawned on me, it's like, everybody's just, they're emboldened. They're empowered by knowing that you don't have to use a name. Nothing that traces back to you. So you can say or do whatever you want. At least with Facebook, for heaven's sakes, at least there's a name there. But if the Greek government thinks it's going to drop the toxicity, forget it. Didn't work here. By next year, every new car sold in the United States could be required to actively monitor the person behind the wheel, including being able to decide if you're fit to drive. Another expert backing up talk that Ozempic can make your manhood look bigger. But it's not all good news. It could also reduce your interest in having sex. I don't know. I'm on this stuff. I got diagnosed a couple of years ago with type 2 diabetes. I'm only 185 pounds. It's not like I'm a big fat guy with swollen ankles. I was really sort of disappointed to find out. I was also disappointed to find out that you can't get rid of it. It's like once you are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, that's it. You have it. You have it until the day you die. Now, as far as Ozempic is concerned, it dropped my A1C really, really quickly, but I also dropped about 17 pounds, so that's great. And nothing will make you feel sexier as a man, and come to think of it, it probably works for women too. Nothing makes you feel sexier then looking down and go, look at this, look how great I look. Well, let's go test some of this out. And of course, men for years, actually Jack LaLanne. If you're old enough to remember this guy, he was one of the very first exercise gurus to be on TV back in the old black and white days. And the show was targeted to housewives. Again, it was the 1950s. And he was showing primarily how to do like isometrics and using giant cans of soup and everything like that as free weights. And, and he always used to say the best incentive for men to lose weight, flatten your stomach, is it makes your junk look bigger. And there's even a reference sort of to that in the Billy Crystal produced movie and directed movie of 61 that was on HBO about the Roger Maris, Mickey Mantle home run chase. And it's right at the beginning of the movie where he talks about the fact that he likes to date women with small hands because it makes his junk look bigger. And there's a famous picture online of Mickey Mantle standing at his locker, stark naked. It did not look like Mickey was having problems in that department. Let's just leave it at that. Somebody with nothing better to do sat around and put together a list of popular TV show quotes that are commonly used by you and me and everybody in everyday life. That's what she said from The Office. What you talk about, Willis, from Gary Coleman, Different Strokes. Come on down. Price is Right. I can't really do it. Porky Pig. That's all, folks. Looney Tunes. You Rang from The Addams Family. A 3-hour tour, Gilligan's Island. Here's Johnny. Johnny Carson, Tonight Show. Is that your final answer? Regis Philbin on Millionaire. The Tribe Has Spoken. Jeff Probst on Survivor. Good night and good luck. The signature sign-off of CBS journalist and war correspondent Edward R. Murrow. Speaking of CBS, it is coming down to it on Stephen Colbert. Only a couple of weeks left. He's out and done on the 21st of May. I got a strong sense, based on the relationship that we're living in unprecedented times. You go back to the Johnny Carson days, Dick Cavett, everything like that. People did not like one another. If you were a late-night television talk show host and you were up against somebody else, look at even when Arsenio got his show, he said, I'm going to kick Jay Leno's ass. These people didn't like one another, and now these guys are all friends. They're thick as thieves, and I got a hunch that Colbert is going to be flanked by pretty much everybody in late-night television. That's just I don't know anything. I'm just guessing. I think it's an educated guess based on what I think I know about these guys. But I got a funny hunch that this thing on the 21st could absolutely be epic. If you live in a city, got to deal with birds, a lot of pigeons, stuff like that. Turns out city birds appear to be more afraid of women than they are of men. And the scientists don't know why. Men can get about 3 feet closer than women can before the birds fly away, regardless of what they're wearing, their height, or how they approach the creatures. I posted a couple of pictures on social media a couple of days ago after it was announced that Shania Twain is going to host the ACM Awards next year for the first time, May 17th, on Prime Video. And people started in right away with, oh my God, she's so beautiful. I can't wait to see it. And I posted side-by-side pictures of what she looks like now compared to what she looked like before her career took off, and it doesn't even look like the same person. She got big buck teeth and a giant space between her teeth. And I'm not being critical of it. Hell, you're born the way you're born, okay? And if you have the money to make yourself look beautiful, or in the case of men, better looking, I guess go for it. We see that in television all the time, even in local TV. I could give you names of women who were completely rebuilt. There was a woman on Fox 2 back in the 80s who married a plastic surgeon, and that guy immediately started rebuilding her. And I guess there's nothing wrong with it, but, just trying to keep it real a little bit. There's a new Netflix special. It's a documentary about Hulk Hogan. And in it, he admits he had a gun in his mouth and considered pulling the trigger at his lowest point after his divorce from his wife, Linda. Started the show by talking about, the fact that I was not doing well there for a couple of weeks. Top causes of death in the United States in 1900 were the flu and tuberculosis. In 2024, the top two, heart disease and cancer. Unintentional injuries, by the way, number 3. Everybody who goes to New York City for the first time usually comes back saying, the whole place smelled like piss. And there's a reason why it does. I mean, with all the hustle and bustle and how people are living on top of one another in New York City, and, it's hard to be anywhere in Manhattan where you could say, yeah, I'm completely on my own. I could do whatever I want. Nobody could see me. That's almost impossible to achieve. So I don't know where all the public urination is going on. It is illegal, and there are cops all over New York, and they can write you a fine for public urination. You can do that anywhere in any city. Well, I've got great news for the Big Apple. Public urination in New York City has surged 50% in the last year. Have a nice day. I don't know if you saw the video floating around on social media, on the internet, of this guy who is a conductor, symphony. These guys wave their arms all over the place. They got their little baton. And there was a woman performing on violin standing basically next to him. I guess she was going to do a solo or something at some point during that particular song that they were playing. And this guy's waving his arms around and accidentally knocks the violin out of her hands. It was being the operative word here, $1 million. $1 million violin. Got a little banged up. Couple of birthdays here. Kirsten Dunst turning 44 this week, which is interesting because it seems like she's been around forever, and she's only 44. Johnny Galecki, Big Bang, 51. Gal Gadot, or Gadot, if you prefer, Wonder Woman, is 41. Ana de Armas, now we're talking. She's 38 this week. She's Cuban, she's Spanish, and she is freaking awesome. Vietnam War ended this week in 1975. We were not on the winning end of things, as you'll recall. 34 years ago this week, 1992, final episode of The Cosby Show aired. 44 million people tuned in. The coming out episode of Ellen, the Ellen DeGeneres thing, aired on ABC in 1997 this week. And Monica Seles, with minding her own business, playing tennis in Hamburg, Germany, and some guy comes jumping out of the crowd with a knife and starts stabbing her in the back. That was 33 years ago this week. She didn't play for almost 3 years after that, and who can blame her? I have tons and tons of sports-related things in my computer, just sort of sitting there waiting for something to jog my memory, and then I throw it at you here on the show. The only tennis thing I think I have in here involves Pam Shriver interviewing Martina Navratilova after a match. This was live on television.
Well, thanks, Bill. With me is Martina Navratilova, winner here 4 times in the 80s, starting in 1983. This was your last of the Grand Slams that you finally won. What was that first one like for you?
Relief, great relief, big monkey off my back. I mean, I said it then and I'm saying it now. It really felt like maybe I never win that tournament, so I was very happy when it finally happened.
Was there one moment that really stands out, either that year or one of the other years that you won it?
Yeah, losing to you, bitch. No.
Wow.
See what I mean? Tennis is a tough town. All right, that's it. The weekend pickup is how we start the Sunday Showgram every week, every Sunday morning here on 101.9, 94.1 and the News Talk STL app. This is the Sunday Showgram. Cinco de Mayo is Tuesday. We'll start the early celebration next.
Música, sonido, éxitos.
Do we have any Mexican Americans with us today? Well, buenos dias.
I like Mexico. I like margaritas. I love Mexican food, and I love Cinco de Mayo. Why not, right? Down here in Florida, we have a lot of people from Venezuela and Guatemala and Puerto Rico and Cuba and places like that. But when I lived in Houston, I guess I wasn't prepared for the idea that 50% of the people who lived down there were Mexicans. Takes a little getting used to. And for the brief time I did live in the Houston area, we were living in a subdivision that was all new construction. Everything was new construction. The house that I moved into had been finished on a Thursday, and we moved in on Saturday. That's how close the whole margin was. The houses on our street were all completed. We even had some trees and grass and stuff like that. But right around the corner, they were still building houses. 7 o'clock in the morning, you would wake up to the sound of hammering, Mexican hammering. And I say that not as a joke because those SOBs work their asses off. You just look and you go, aha. That's why the construction companies and the people putting them new houses, that's why they want Mexicans working, because they work. I think for too long, people who, grew up in the 50s and 60s would watch Three Stooges episodes and they would watch and go, oh, siesta, no, Dolores. And you get the idea that Mexicans were always sleeping and laying around and nobody wanted to work or do anything. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. You ought to see those people work. And they would have a food truck that would come around. And I would go out there at lunchtime and I would stand in line with the guys working, putting roofs on houses. And I would stand in line with them. And some people in the neighborhood would go by and sort of, look down their nose at me like, you're standing in line for a food truck full of Mexicans? Isn't that beneath you? They didn't say that, but you can tell by the way they looked at you that that's what they were thinking. And I'm thinking to myself, all I want is a damn good plate of tacos, and I know I can get one here because I've eaten from the food truck before. And it's like, get out of the way, man. I don't care what you think. I'm eating good in the neighborhood. So Cinco de Mayo is on Tuesday. Although when that happens, the restaurants and the bars and everything pretty much go nuts from the previous Thursday. So you go right from the mint juleps to the Kentucky Derby yesterday, right on to the heavy-duty tequila and margaritas. We have alcohol for all occasions in this country. So in 1988, we're doing the old, morning showgram. What do we call it? The Breakfast Club. The Breakfast Club. How soon they forget. We're doing the Breakfast Club, and by then, pretty much every radio station was doing the same damn thing. Oh, Cinco de Mayo? Why don't we broadcast live from a Mexican restaurant? Wow, what a great idea. Yeah, some of these people thought they were creative geniuses. So when St. Patrick's Day 1988 came about, I said, instead of finding some pub, named O'Leary's or O'Connell's or McMurray's or whatever, let's do something really, really stupid. Let us, on St. Patrick's Day, broadcast live from a Mexican restaurant. And the people at the Hacienda Mexican restaurant on Manchester said, sure, come on down. So we set up, it was like, people thought it was a goofy idea, which is what it was intended to be anyhow. And it turned out to be a beautiful day. March 17th in St. Louis, it could be 28 or it could be 78. Well, in this particular case, it was about 75 degrees, even in the morning, and it was just a beautiful day. And let me tell you something, maybe you were there, but the heavens opened up, and people just came from every corner of the earth, I'm convinced. We just could not believe how big the crowd was, and we're sitting there, and we're looking out the window, and you can see the traffic on Manchester is just backed up all the way to Belleville. And that was when they had that traffic cop, that guy on the motorcycle. We'll just simply refer to him as Officer Z. And the people in Rock Hill and the Rock Hill Police Department believe, because they still believe, even though Officer Z is gone, they still believe that if you're going 31 in a 30 along Manchester Road there in Rock Hill, you deserve to be rung up. And they'll get you too. 31, boom. And I'm telling you, I'll get in the car when I'm in St. Louis and I'll drive all the way to Town and Country before I will go to the Katie's Pizza in Rock Hill, because I just don't even want to give them the opportunity to get me. Well, aforementioned Officer Z just about lost his frickin' mind that day, and he was threatening to arrest people if they didn't start driving, and they're like, I'm in traffic! Where do you want me to go? And so it did cause a little bit of a distraction, a little bit of a problem for the city of Rock Hill and the Rock Hill Police Department and Officer Z, and I could not have been happier.
Mexico, here we come. Gah! 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 Mexico, here we come. Gah!
You know what I love stuff about tacos?
What's that? Everything. Do tacos get any more kick butt than this?
Oh, they're about to, all right. New at Taco Town. We take a crunchy all-beef taco, smother it in nacho cheese, lettuce, tomato, and our special Southwestern sauce. Then we wrap it in a soft flour tortilla with a layer of refried beans in between.
Sweet.
Then we wrap that in a savory corn tortilla with a middle layer of Monterey Jack cheese.
Awesome.
And it gets even awesomer when we take a deep-fried gordita shell, smear on a layer of our special guacamolito sauce, and wrap that around the outside.
This is pretty big.
It gets bigger because we bake it in a corn husk filled with pico de gallo, then wrap that in an authentic Parisian crepe filled with egg, Gruyere, merguez sausage, and portobello mushrooms.
Can I eat it now?
Sure. But not before we take the whole thing and wrap that in a Chicago-style deep dish meat lovers pizza.
Pizza? Now that's what I call a taco.
Well, it's not a Taco Town taco until we roll it up in a blueberry pancake, dip it in batter, and deep fry it until it's golden brown. Then we serve it all in a commemorative tote bag filled with spicy vegetarian chili. It's 15 great tastes all rolled into one.
Taco Town!
The new pizza crepe taco pancake chili bag. Only at Taco Town.
Taco Town!
All right, break out the tequila and get going. So what if it's only 8 o'clock in the morning? Who cares? You think the Mexicans care? They don't. All right, we're going to break, come back, and take you back to 1997, a big night for St. Louis in New York City. That's up next. I told the story before. I used to send scripts to Bill Wendell, who was Letterman's announcer back in the day before Alan Coulter came along, and Bill would record the scripts, and then we would play that Letterman music, and we'd be like, from St. Louis, roadkill capital of mid-America, it's the Breakfast Club with J.C. Court, stuff like that. I'd write him a check for $1,000. He'd do the scripts. Everything was under the table. Everybody went away happy. So this is the period when I was at Clue, KLOU, back in 1997, and somebody at Letterman had the bright idea to say, tell you what we're going to do. Over the course of like the next 6 or 8 Friday nights, let's have the entire audience here at the Ed Sullivan Theater, which I believe was 488 people. Let's pick out a city and then have everybody from the audience be from that city. By the way, that meant 3 plane loads. And I can tell you that because one of the cities that was chosen in this whole thing, I think they started with Indianapolis because that was Dave's, very close to his hometown. But then we got around to St. Louis, and they called us up and they said, okay, we're going to give you a number of tickets to give away, like maybe, 50 tickets to give away. You give them away on the air, raise a lot of awareness for this whole thing. It's going to be a great night for St. Louis. And we're like, give us the tickets. Go ahead. So because I was working for Channel 4 at the time, Letterman had just moved over from NBC to CBS. I got to go along on the trip too, but as a reporter, so I was working the entire time and getting shots of all of this and interviewing Larry Bud Melvin and Rupert G. and just running around. They had a reception for everybody from St. Louis. It was really, really cool. But to be standing there watching 3 whole plane loads of people from St. Louis get on those planes and head for New York was just something really, really cool. What we didn't know is that the entire monologue was going to be centered on St. Louis, but that's what he did. And you're going to hear it here in just a couple of seconds. So like I said, I was, getting video of all this sort of stuff, and then I had to run over to the CBS network facility and edit everything, lay down voice tracks, and then they bounce it off the satellite, and you saw it here in St. Louis. So we come flying in. They put us at the New York Hilton, nice hotel. Then they round up everybody a couple of hours before the show. The NYPD comes in and blocks off the streets, and there is basically a parade of hundreds of people from St. Louis going from the hotel over to the Ed Sullivan Theater. It was amazing. So I shot that. And then they had everybody waiting outside, and I went running inside, and I told my cameraman, I go, all right, I'm going to get a shot of the crowd coming in to the theater. All right, so set up here. So he got up on the stage, and it was just me, my photographer, and at one point, Biff Henderson came wandering out, and he was sort of looking around like, what are you guys doing? I explained it to him. But then it was just me standing there, and if you're familiar with the Ed Sullivan Theater, you know that the first couple of rows of seats are sunken, I would say about 4 feet. So if you're standing in that first row, and I was, the stage is about chest high. And I remember just being struck for a moment as I stood there in awe of being inside the Ed Sullivan Theater. It just struck me as so weird that this is where the Beatles performed, right here on this stage. This is where I saw George Carlin for the very first time. The Supremes, all of the Stones, everybody who went through there, all those juggling acts and all that goofy stuff from around the world, all those years that Ed Sullivan put on, comedy variety shows on Sunday night. And I remember just reaching out, and again, keep in mind that the stage is about chest high, and I just reached out and I put my hand on the stage and just try to absorb the vibe. And it was just one of those moments that I will never forget. So anyhow, there was a bunch of commotion towards the back of the theater, and then I realized they were opening up the doors and going to let everybody in, and sure enough, they just came rushing in like a tidal wave. We were getting all of this on video, and I was really pumping up the crowd. I was supposed to be there just as a reporter, but I was cheating because I was pumping them up, and I was, yelling to them, and we were getting everybody. And these people were so excited. It was unbelievable. I mean, think about it. You win a free trip to New York. Everything's paid for. You're meeting all these celebrities from the show, all these people that, you are accustomed to seeing. Like I said, like Larry Bud Melman and people like that. And they're feeding you. And now you're going over, you see a television show being recorded. And these people acted like they had just won the lottery. And to a large extent, it wasn't really that different from that. I mean, your chances of being chosen for free tickets were pretty small, but those 488 people were just enjoying life. And I will tell you a little story because I'm going to play this for you right now, and it will help to know this ahead of time. Eddie Brill is a stand-up comedian that did the warm-up for Letterman for many, many years. He'd go out there about 5 minutes before they started the show, and he would tell some jokes, get everybody all revved up, explain a couple of things. They tell you not to whistle because it screws up the audio in the booth, and just stuff like that. And then Eddie goes off the stage. The next thing you know, you hear that theme music being played by Paul Schaefer, and out comes Dave, and there it is. It's all happening. I'm getting goosebumps right now even just thinking about this. This is how exciting it was. But I talked to Eddie Brill the next day, and he said it was one of the most responsive audiences that they can ever remember having taken place in that theater for a taping of David Letterman. And then I ran into him about a year later. I ran into Eddie Brill, and we were talking about it again. And he goes, yeah, a lot of times we'll have a really, really, live crowd, people really, really excited. And somebody backstage will say, how's the crowd tonight? And Eddie told me that frequently they will say, well, it's not St. Louis, but it's a pretty good crowd. That's how memorable it was for everybody, including the people who put on the show. So now with all of that background, here's how it sounded 29 years ago this week, 1997, off to New York on JC's Sunday Showgram.
From New York, where everyone in the audience is from St. Louis, it's The Late Show with David Letterman. Tonight, Roseanne, Chef Justin Miller, and Chuck Berry. Plus Paul Schaefer and the CBS Orchestra. And now, Mr. Show Me himself, David Letterman.
very much. Have a seat. Thank you. Very nice of you, ladies and gentlemen, but please, we have to hurry this along. I've got tickets for the Sally Jesse Raphael show. You know what's funny about this? I didn't think you'd really come. I had no idea. I got to tell you something, folks. Tonight, in honor of the great people and the great city of St. Louis, tonight, I am wearing my Budweiser twist-off toupee. I guess you know what we're doing by now. A week ago tonight, everybody in the audience was from my hometown of Indianapolis. Tonight, everybody in the theater is from the great city, the gateway city of St. Louis, Missouri. And yeah, sure. Next week, we're hoping to fill the theater with those Texas militia guys. So, that goes.
That's a nice.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, good news tonight. Nobody goes home empty-handed. No, sir. Everybody in the audience tonight gets a year's supply of Purina Audience Chow. By the way, I heard some bad news. If St. Louis Rams running back Lawrence Phillips, if he gets arrested one more time, he automatically becomes property of the Dallas Cowboys. That's it. I think the people of New York City were a little disappointed when the Rams moved to St. Louis, We were, kind of hoping you'd take the Jets. Well, now you know how we feel. I love doing this show, and I've been doing it for, oh my God, it seems like 16, 17 years every night. It's a big job entertaining America night after night after night. And seriously, I love it, but the only reason I'm really doing it, when I get enough money, when I finally get enough money, this is serious, I'm gonna open my own theater in Branson. It's great that you folks were able to come from Missouri. And by the way, Missouri is unbelievably beautiful, isn't it? Isn't it a lovely state? I was thinking about this afternoon. You folks have come from Missouri, the show me state, of course. Now you're here in New York, the bite me state. We have a lovely show for you folks tonight. We're going to make it worth your time and your trouble. Roseanne is on the program. We have a 7-year-old chef, Justin Miller, and Mr. Rock and Roll. Am I right, Paul? Yeah! Chuck Berry.
From St. Louis.
It was a remarkable night. I will never forget it as long as I live. All right, that's it for hour number 1. Hour number 2 is on the way, and we're going to talk about a prank that comedian Amy Schumer pulled on Katie Couric. Lots more on the way in hour number 2. Stick around.
There was an old farmer who lived by a rock, sat in the meadow, was shaking his fist at some boys who were down by the creek, feet in the water, their hands on their marbles and playthings. And in days of yore, they met a young maiden. She looked like a pretty young creature. She sat on the grass, pulled up her dresses to show us her ruffles and laces with the white fluffy duck. Said she was learning a new way to bring up her children and teach them to knit, while the boys in the barnyard were shoveling refuse and litter from yesterday's hunt, while the girl in the meadow was rubbing her eyes at the boys just like girls sometimes do, to make it quite clear that she wanted to go for a nice pleasant stroll on the grass and hurry back home for a nice piece of ice cream and cake that stood 3 layers tall. After dessert, she was ready to go for another walk down by the dock, with Then a young man with a sizable roll of 100s and a big bulge up front. If he'd ask politely, she'd show him her little pet dog that was subject to fits. He'd reach on over, grab hold of her small tender hands with the movement so quick. She'd bend on over and suck on his soda so sweetly till she finished it, and pull down her panties to rub on her hip that she bruised as she ran down the halls. Cause she tried to force her to lick on his candy so tasty made of butterscotch, and then he spread whipped cream all over her cookies that she had been baking all night. If you think this is dirty, you're well right.
Working, it's working.
What's working?
The radio, I fixed it.
You what?
Honest, I'm not dreaming or anything. And I figure you better do the talking, because I don't want to cause any more trouble. I want everything to work out just right.
But how could you have fixed the radio?
Oh, it was easy. All I did was hit it like this.
I'm JC, and this is the Sunday Showgram on 101.9 and the News Talk STL app. We do the Wayback Machine, pretty much all music on Saturday night from 6 until 9 at night, and then we come back on Sunday morning and tell old stories. This one doesn't go back that far, but it requires a little bit of setting up here. So I think by now everybody knows who Amy Schumer is. She's an acquired taste. There's a lot of people who don't like Amy Schumer for a variety of reasons. Republicans don't like because she is related to Democratic figurehead Chuck Schumer. A little bit on the gross side with her humor. Somehow Nikki Glaser gets away with it, but Amy Schumer doesn't. And then Amy Schumer got married, and then she got divorced, and she put on a ton of weight. But have you seen her recently? I don't know if it was Ozempic or what it was, but Amy Schumer looks fabulous. It's the best she's ever looked in her entire life, because she's always been a little bit on the chubby side, and then she got really, really heavy. So she probably hasn't looked like this since middle school, but she looks fantastic now. There was a TV show that was running on cable a couple of years ago called Inside Amy Schumer, and it was some of the funniest stuff I have ever seen. And she is a marvelous comedic actress. If you ever saw her in the movie Trainwreck with Bill Hader, a couple of other people, I mean, she's really good. I'm not a huge fan of hers, but I give credit where credit is due, and she was really good in that series. They did a spoof of these Aaron Sorkin scripts and TV shows. There was a thing with Jeff Daniels a couple of years ago called The Newsroom, which was loosely based on, maybe CNN or MSNBC or Fox or something like that. And they did a spoof on Inside Amy Schumer. They did a spoof of that Aaron Sorkin stuff called The Food Room, and it was about a fast food restaurant, but it was written and shot in the style of Aaron Sorkin and The West Wing and stuff like that. It was one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen on television. I heard a podcast once where Amy Schumer, who, if you think she's wild now, and a lot of people do, by the way, but I guess she was maybe in her late teens, early 20s, something like that. She told a story about an Uber driver to get out of paying him. She gave him a hand job. And I'm like, wow, this chick is really out there. It's one thing to do it. It's another thing to go public with it. A couple of years ago, Amy Schumer is on one of the late night talk shows. I think it might have been Fallon. And she tells this story about Katie Couric.
Yes. So I was at the Glamour Women of the Year Awards, and Katie Couric comes up, and I love her, and she's like, I just love you. I love humor. Like anyone who loves comedy, would you ever be like, humor? So Katie's like, I'm going to sit next to you at dinner. So at dinner, it was Colbert, Stephen Colbert. Yeah, then Katie, me, and then Mindy Kaling. Fantastic. It was like a sick table. So,
we want to be at that table.
Everybody, I wanted to be there. And I was there. And so, but anyway, so then Katie is like, oh my God, my husband's here. Like, he wasn't invited. It's so embarrassing. They're like newly married, I guess. Yeah. She's like, should I go talk to him? And I'm like, I don't know, Katie Couric. Like, that's your husband, I guess. Your husband, yeah. And I look, and she left her phone. She left her phone open to text from him. Oh. So, I know. So, don't worry, I didn't do anything. Except I picked it up, and I just, without even thinking, text him, I want to have anal tonight. And I sent it. Jimmy, come back. Jimmy. Come back. I know. I'm like, I didn't even think of it. It just, I pick up the phone, and it happened so fast. I show Mindy, and I go, well, look what happened. She's like, what do you mean what happened? You did that. You just did that. Oh, my God. And I show Colbert, and he is on the floor laughing, like on the floor. And then Katie comes back like 90 seconds later, and her husband are like, so we're leaving. Like, I don't know why he wants to leave.
She loves humor. That's a pretty good story. Better than anything I got today. All right, so Cinco de Mayo is on Tuesday, although the celebrations at the bars and the restaurants started about a week and a half ago. You put Cinco de Mayo on a Tuesday, and I guarantee you the weekend before might as well be Cinco de Mayo. So you go right to the tequila after a weekend of mint juleps and the Kentucky Derby.
Welcome to the third race at the Honeymoon is Over Downs. They're at the gate, and they're off. Jumping out in the lead is Romance and Affection, with Domestic Bliss in close behind. It's Romance and Affection and Domestic Bliss. Here comes Marriage Vows, followed by Immediate Child. Romance and Affection falling off quickly. Mortgaged Up the Ass, overtaking Domestic Bliss. And here comes Nasty Attitude, followed by More Children and Drinking Heavily. Coming down the backstretch, Drinking Heavily moving out in front of Mortgaged Up the Ass. But coming on strong on the outside is Credit in Shambles. It's Credit in Shambles, followed by I Don't Give a Shit, Nasty Attitude, and Up Yours Keep. Up Yours Keep challenging for second, going into the clubhouse turn. Passing on the rail is I Don't Give a Shit, taking the lead. Followed by the f***ing house. You cook like shit, and I f***ed your brother. Here they come, spinning out of the turn. I Don't Give a Shit still in front. Up Yours Keep challenging for the lead. Up Yours Keep and I Don't Give a Shit neck and neck. And down the stretch they come. Up Yours Keep is pulling away from I Don't Give a Shit by a length. Coming on strong is I Am Out of Here, and passing the pack is the f***ing house. And at the wire, it's Up Yours Keep, the f***ing house, I Don't Give a Shit, and I Am Out of Here.
This is actually a great story, and it coincides with the Kentucky Derby.
Kentucky woman, she shine with her own kind of light.
So, like I said, it's a great story. I think everybody knows Drew Johnson. Joined Casey sometime in the early 1980s, and he would fill in on the old Morning Zoo along with me on many occasions. And then really for the whole second 2/3 of his career, he worked behind the scenes, putting together things that you would hear between the songs on the radio stations in that group. So anyhow, Drew has an older brother, and that older brother started out as the track announcer at Fairmount Park way back in the day. So he did that for a number of years, and then lo and behold, he gets the job sitting next to Dick Enberg most of the time on ABC. And then I want to say it moved over to NBC or something, because I know Dick Enberg was NBC. But anyhow, they worked together doing the Kentucky Derby, and then when the contract shifted to another network, Dave became the radio voice of the Kentucky Derby. And as a matter of fact, if you have Sirius XM and you were like really, really into the Derby, Dave Johnson was actually doing the pre-race coverage. So he's still at it. For a period of years, David Letterman was absolutely fascinated by Dave Johnson, and he would have him on the show, and then he would do these bits where he'd just pick up the phone, and every time he did, out came Dave Johnson's signature call.
Down the stretch they come.
There it is. So a number of years ago, we asked Dave Johnson to be on with us. He's like, absolutely, yeah. And he says, give me the name of everybody on the station. Because, Dave hadn't lived in St. Louis a real long time. And at that time, I was like, okay, well, there's the U-Man. There is Radio Rich. Used to come on after us. We had close to in the afternoon show, Jennifer Sparks at that time, affectionately known as Sparky. And then we got out of the way and let the man do his thing.
Says he needs some warm-up for the big race tomorrow. So, Dave, a little warm-up in order here?
Yeah. Here, and they're off in the K-Hits Derby. It's Radio Rick going to the lead and JC second. Mark Close is right there. Sparky, the only filly in the race, and she's in traffic trouble already. Brother Drew is fifth, the new man way at the back of the pack as they race down the backstretch. JC up to take the lead. Radio Rick, those two are head and head. Mark Close just can't get close to the two leaders. Brother Drew is moving up on the outside as Sparky drops back, and U-Man can see them all.
Come on, U-Man!
They move past 270 in Riverview Drive. Oh, I mean, they're on the far turn. JC, Radio Rick, Brother Drew, three of them across the track. Mark Close drops out of it. U-Man begins a big run on the outside, and Sparky still the trailer. Top of the stretch in the K-Hits Derby. Brother Drew takes the lead. JC still there. U-Man joins them on the outside, and down
stretch, they come. JC at the rail. Brother Drew between horses. You man on the outside. Three of them to the wire. Photo finish. Oh, what a race. What a trio. Hey, what a station.
As you probably know, I like to be up to no good once in a while. I just have fun. I'm just entertaining myself. I'm not bothering anybody. I'm not hurting anybody, but I just like to get in there when I can and sort of, fool around with people's lives. And if it's a friend, even better. So right before I got sick, a couple of weeks ago, the Chicago Cubs were in town here in Tampa to play the Tampa Bay Rays. And my best buddy from high school, I just reconnected with a couple of years ago, and he lives in Darien, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. And one thing I know about Len is that if the Cubs are on TV, he's at home watching. Now, he didn't know I was going to that baseball game in Tampa, and he also didn't know that I stopped by the broadcast booth of the Chicago Cubs before the game.
Hey, we got a nice note today from Jim Corcoran, who's here in the ballpark. And his best friend from high school, Len Kowalski, is watching back in Darien.
Hi, Len.
April of 1970, on opening day, they cut class at St. Lawrence High School.
Len and Jim.
Len and Jim did, to go see Ken Holtzman with a complete game win over the Phillies, 5-4. And they had a lot of explaining to do to the Christian brothers the next day when they saw their sunburns.
Now, of course, at that point, my phone starts going off like crazy. I'm getting an avalanche of texts going, they just mentioned, and then you said, and it was Len, and he said, and I'm like, yes, I know. I sent it up to the booth. Those guys were nice enough to do it. So it's nice to pull stuff like that once in a while. But it's also nice, even after all these years of doing this, it's nice when it happens to you. And this was also from a couple of weeks ago. I didn't know St. Louis and Andy Cohen had his own Sirius XM show. And so a couple of weeks ago, he has the other famous person from St. Louis right now, John Hamm. He has him in the Sirius XM studio, part of his show. And John Hamm and Andy Cohen are just sitting there BSing.
We were kind of paired with the studio when we came out, which is also a big hit. So
Yes.
we had a little rock block for Apple on Wednesdays. They would drop shows, and everybody wants to talk about it. So
Rock
it's good
block.
stuff. Yeah.
KC. KC.
Yes, sir.
John and I are from
St. Louis, Missouri. We have a lot of inside jokes.
Yes, we do.
JC Corcoran and the Morning Zoo.
JC. I'm speaking at the WashU graduation this year.
Buddy, I did SLU last year.
And again, as you might imagine, my phone started going off like crazy. And they're like, John Hamm and Andy Cohen are just talking about it. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, I went back and retrieved it, and it's pretty cool, I thought. And you know that I've never met either guy. That's the astonishing thing. So thanks to the boys for the excellent shout out.
Radio. Who needs a radio? Like what you're hearing? Don't forget JC's Wayback Machine every Saturday night from 6 until 9 on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL and the free News Talk STL app.
Yeah, so a lot of talk about the Secret Service in recent days and recent weeks. This story goes back to, let me get this right, 1985. And we used to have a lot of celebrities stop by the station when we were doing the old morning zoo. Pat Sajak, people will remember. Bob Eubanks from the Newlywed Game. Jay Leno, Jerry Seinfeld. And an occasional actor or actress would come in too. And this is back in the days when we were doing a lot of what they used to call theater of the mind, where you'd be making something up and everybody listening knew you were making it up, but you would do it anyhow, and you would it was like doing a Saturday Night Live sketch or something like that, and everybody would be in on it. We're always perpetrating things like that. Well, some woman, some actress had been on the show, and she had been flirting with me the entire time, and people were like, oh, hit up that girl because she wants you. Like, yeah, well, she just flew out of Lambert, and she's not coming back, so I think she was just having fun with me. Why not have a little fun while you're on the road promoting a movie or a show or something like that? So one morning, I pick up the newswire, and I see that woman, this famous actress, was getting engaged. And so I started acting like I had been horribly jilted and that I was just coming apart at the seams because I was so devastated by the announcement that this woman was getting married at me. And so I was, again, playing like the jilted lover. Of course, it was all made up, but it was still funny. And at some point, I remember saying something about him, and I have to do something to get her attention back or whatever. And I made a comment about Jodie Foster and John Hinckley. Remember, Hinckley was the guy who shot Reagan because he thought he was going to get the attention of Jodie Foster. I think everybody who was around back then remembers that. And it was just like a throwaway bit. It was over and done with in about a minute or two, and that was pretty much it. So I get off the air at 10 o'clock, as I always do, and I go back to the offices, and I'm just sort of sitting there, and I'm minding my own business, making preparations for the show they're going to put on the next day, making some long-range plans, just, returning phone calls. Everybody wanted something. People were offering us more stuff, more guest opportunities and things like that. So all this stuff had to be done every single day that we did the show, and the show was just so popular back then that we had our hands full. Let's put it that way. So I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm getting ready to wrap up here. Maybe I'll be able to get out of here in the next half hour or something. And there's a knock at the door, and standing there is the executive secretary of the general manager. And she has this look on her face, like one of those "what did you do" looks. And she says, "The Secret Service is here and they need to talk to you." And I just sat there for a minute and goes, somebody's playing games here. There's secrets. I didn't even think there was a Secret Service office in St. Louis. Turns out, by the way, I was wrong. But anyhow, and I come out to the lobby, and sure enough, there's two dudes standing there. It looked like Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith from Men in Black. They're not smiling. And I made absolutely no connection whatsoever with the bit that we had done that morning where I had mentioned John Hinckley and Jodie Foster. It never even occurred to me. And I'm just thinking, these guys are here for something. Maybe they want to ask me some questions about somebody. Even then, I knew that somebody who was involved with the show every day was into, shall we say, activities that could have gotten you thrown in jail. I just didn't realize at the time how bad the situation was, but that story will have to come at another time. So I take these guys back to an unused office, and the whole time I'm thinking to myself, what could they want? Well, it turns out they wanted me. Something I did not know at the time is that if there is an accusation against somebody making, for example, a threat against the life of the president, they are required by law to investigate that. And I come back to the office, we close the door, I'm like, what's up, guys? And they tell me that there had been an official complaint at the Secret Service office in St. Louis about what I had said that morning, which could have been construed as a threat against the president. You think the seashell thing is lame? How about this? And even after I explained the whole thing was just part of a little radio sketch, just something really, it was like a throwaway, it wasn't even a big deal, they still were asking questions. They flat out asked me, do you have any intent to hurt the president of the United States? I'm like, of course not. I guess you guys got to do your job and everything, but I got to do my job too, and I have to say no. And at the time, all I could think of was, who would have been so stupid that they would have, or just hated me so much, that they would have, sicked the Secret Service on me and tried to get me in trouble, or worse. Somebody either had to be really, really dumb, or really, really bored, or just wanted to see me get in trouble or whatever. So they were there for about 20 minutes, and we just sort of shot the bull a little bit. And you could tell they were attempting to prolong the conversation. I was trying to get out of there, and they were prolonging it. No question about it. And I guess that's something they do. They don't feel as though they have thoroughly investigated unless they keep you there for quite a while and ask you really a lot of questions. So I finally got out of there, and like I said, I walked around for years wondering who could have done this and why they would have done it. And, eventually you just stop thinking about it, and that's that, and you move on. So all of that, again, like I said, happened in 1985. Now, in 1986, I got into a contract squabble with Casey, and they're pulling me off the air all the time, suspending me and pulling stuff out of my contract arbitrarily, trying to make life miserable for me, trying to show, I think they'd be like, well, we're the bosses, we're in charge. It's like, no, not in any of that sort of stuff. I'm just in there telling dick jokes every day. I just want to do my show and be left alone. And by the way, we're in first place. We're even breathing down the backs of KMOX. So what's the problem? Why are you guys on me about everything all the time? So a year later in 1986 is when all this hit the fan. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Was I going to stay in St. Louis? Was I going to go to Chicago? I had job offers all over the country. What do I want to do? It took me a while to sort of figure things out. You have a little bit of a non-compete clause. On top of it, they owe you money, severance pay, all that sort of stuff. And it takes time. It takes months for everything to sort of clear your system and make you available for employment somewhere else, which is what happened to me in 1987 when I was approached by a radio station at the time was known as KS94. And they were playing soft rock, Captain and Tennille and crap like that. And we were in the process of going to flip that station to a classic rock station. And after months of negotiation, we finally get a contract that I can sign. I sign it. And they have a big party. And they're like, come on, we're going to have a big party for you that we have signed you here at KSD 93.7. Come on over. We're going to have a great time. Everybody's going to be there from the station. Okay, I come walking in. And they're all laughing, which could make you very self-conscious very, very quickly, by the way, if you've ever been in that situation. And they're all laughing. And I'm like, all right, what are you guys trying to tell me here? You guessed it. The station that had just hired me in 1987 were the people who called the Secret Service on me. And I got trashed in the newspapers and everything like that. Secret Service, J.C. Corcoran's such a dangerous person, even the Secret Service had to go. And 2 years later, I'm working for the people who were responsible for the call to the Secret Service. And they think it's the funniest thing they've ever heard. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, maybe you should have told me this before I signed this contract, because I might have felt a little different about it. And down through the years, there's always been stuff like this that has gone on behind the scenes that you never knew anything about. And some people have criticized me in the past because they say, every time you leave a radio station or you get fired or something like that, you're always going into some big, long story about what happened. And I'm like, yeah, name one other person in St. Louis radio who's ever done that. See, you're forgetting that I'm the only person who does it. So, of course, it's going to make it seem like I'm whining or something like that. But I believe in transparency. And if I'm working somewhere and you're listening every day and all of a sudden I'm not working there anymore, I'm going to tell you what happened. You'd think that people would appreciate that, but they just use it to get on you because they're bored and they got nothing else to do, I guess. But again, this behind-the-scenes stuff happens all the time. So in 1986, we're sitting there at Casey, and we are number one everywhere you looked. We were, like I said, we were breathing down the back of KMOX, which a lot of people didn't think was possible, but we were. You got to remember, then the station gets to charge a lot more for commercials, and that also means that the salespeople, their commission goes up exponentially. I had one guy who said, I want to thank you for putting my kids through college. And I'm thinking to myself, you're probably making a lot more money than me, but I'm the guy who is creating the product to put on the air. Don't you think that that's a little backwards? Maybe I should be getting more money? They didn't see it that way. What a surprise, right? And at the time, they were paying me $150,000 a year. And don't get me wrong, it's pretty good money, especially in 1986, $150,000, pretty good money. But it still should have been a lot more. And as I mentioned, I was getting job offers from all over the country. So there was a radio station in Los Angeles, KLOS, and they were the established classic rock station. Matter of fact, well, I'm getting ahead of myself here. These two guys fly in from L.A., and they didn't even bother to get a hotel or anything like that. They just said, we're going to book a flight. We're going to come in. We're going to meet with you. We'll just meet right at the airport. We'll see if we can put together a deal. And I didn't want to necessarily leave St. Louis, but at the same time, you're thinking, wow, Los Angeles, that's pretty big-time stuff. So sure enough, I went out there, and I met with them. We sit down, and these guys are exactly the kind of people you would expect. Guys are just a little over-slicked, if you know what I mean. A little too smooth. It's part of the whole Los Angeles mentality. That's just the way people are out there. So they start making their pitch, and they're going on and on and on. And, we got this morning show opening, and, oh, my God, you could make all this money and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, okay, how much is all this money? And they said, we are prepared to offer you $150,000 a year. And I said, do you know that that's what I'm being paid here in St. Louis right now? And my money in Los Angeles would go about 40% as far, which means it's more like $80,000 a year when you adjust it. And that's just not enough. And then they start like, well, you know, most of the people we have on the air have side gigs, okay? And, you know, selling movie scripts and emceeing TV shows, becoming national celebrities. And there isn't any reason in the world why you wouldn't be able to do any of that. I said, yeah, but 5 minutes ago, you were complaining about the fact that your staff doesn't seem that dedicated to the radio station. And did it occur to you that maybe the reason they don't seem dedicated to the radio station is that you're basically forcing them out on the street to get side gigs? They didn't like that. They didn't like that at all. I was questioning their wisdom. But doesn't that make sense? I mean, I'm asking you, doesn't that make sense? These guys are complaining, well, you know, we need somebody to put a supercharged into the staff, and, you know, you could get in there and you're just what we're looking for, and, you know, well, we're just not going to pay you enough to live, so you'll have to find some side gigs in the Los Angeles and Hollywood entertainment industry. Sorry, guys, not what I want. They got back on a plane, flew back to Los Angeles, and I never heard from them again. Easy come, easy go, I guess. Oh, and one other thing from my archives. I love this story. I've been telling it for years. You know, I keep all my planners, and I have all my planners going all the way back to 1982, 2 years before I got to St. Louis. So I can tell you where I was, who I was with, what was going on, because I just go back to those calendars and I just look it up. That's why I have all these references to things that happened back in the day. In this particular case, it's not in my planner, but I always remember the date. And that date was May 6th, 1971. 71, JC! Yes, 1971. It was the final weeks of my time in high school. In fact, it was the day of our senior prom. But my high school team had a baseball game that day, that afternoon. So we played our game, and we didn't play particularly well. We played a team from Hales Franciscan. It was a Catholic school from the Chicago Catholic League, but it was all black. I didn't even know that there were all black Catholic high schools in Chicago, but we played them and we lost. And we didn't play well in losing. Sometimes you play well and you still lose. No, we didn't play well. I think a lot of guys were thinking about the prom. And I'd seen some of the guys' girlfriends, and it was totally understandable. Let's just leave it at that. So we had a baseball coach who I did not like. He was just dumb. And I didn't think he particularly knew much about baseball. Anyhow, he was actually the basketball coach. And I think he took the baseball thing just because they didn't have a coach. And they're like, okay, I'll do it too. It's more money. But you know, you can tell whether somebody knows the game or not. And I never thought that he did. But in addition to that, he just seemed like a dope. And again, after that loss, and we're just all trying to get out of there. You know, we got to put these tuxedos on and everything, clean ourselves up. Dance is starting in a couple of hours. And he decides to sit us down in right field and give us a chewing out. And I will never, ever forget this because he accused us of not playing like a team. You're not playing like a team. That's why we're not winning. You got to play like a team. And then he uttered those immortal words. You're not playing like a team. That's why we're 4-4 instead of 10-0. And a couple of us looked at each other out of the corner of our eyes like 4-4 is 8, not 10. This guy's even dumber than we thought.
It's JC's Sunday Showgram on NewsTalkSTL.
And that's it for the Sunday Showgram.
The JC Corcoran Podcast.